aisle and into the church court.
Hello, Robin.
Hello, very good to meet you.
Thank you very much indeed.
You see, Anne was pregnant and they needed a marriage licence fast. And in the archives here, they still have Will and Anne's licence. But as with so many Shakespeare documents, there's a twist.
Here, William Shakespeare, spelled with an X, and Anna Whately of Temple Grafton.
William Shakespeare and Anne Whately, not Anne Hathaway.
Not Anne Hathaway.
So could William really have promised himself to two different women?
Over all the years that I've been trying to explain this to people, and you come up with all the ones that people say, the romantic novel version that, Anne Hathaway tears him away from Anne Whately and says, "You're not marrying her, you're marrying me," and these are the sort of the bodice-ripping romantic novel stories. I think it's just a slip.
It's rather sad, isn't it? The second Anne, just a clerical error by an overworked clerk who'd been dealing with Whateleys the same day.
It's a pity, isn't it? You imagine the beautiful young teenage Anne Whately, the woman who's passionately in love with, and he's got to marry the one who's 27 and long in the tooth and whatever.
Expecting a baby.
I'm expecting a baby, yes.
Now, in Tudor times, you couldn't marry during the 6 weeks of the Christmas season. So they must have done it with a day to spare on St. Andrew's Day, November the 30th, 1582. But it's the place that's interesting. The place named in the licence, Temple Grafton.
With my body I honour you.
With my body I honour you.
All that I am I give to you.
All that I am I give to you.
And all that I have I share with you.
The vicar, John Frith, is one of those minor characters who just leap off the pages of Elizabethan government reports. He was skilled at cures. The government spy says that he knew how to heal wounded hawks, and many people came here for that reason. But the chief thing is that John Frith was an old Catholic priest. He drew up Catholic-style wills, and a couple of years before, he'd been reported for holding weddings out of the appointed season and without the reading of the banns 3 times. So he'd done it before. He was the sort of person you came to if you were in a hurry, or if you wanted a wedding more in tune with the old faith.
For his wedding feast, William composed a sonnet. He pinched the idea from Tom Watson's Book of Love Poems. By his standards, it's not very good, but it's his first known poem, and he wrote few more touching pieces in his life. It's addressed to his new wife, and it puns on Anne's name, Hathaway.
Those lips that love's own hand did make breathe forth the sound that said, I hate, to me that languished for her sake. But when she saw my woeful state, straight in her heart did mercy come, chiding that tongue that ever sweet was used in giving gentle doom, and taught it thus anew to greet. I hate, she altered with an end that followed it as gentle day doth follow night, who like a fiend from heaven to hell is flown away. I hate, from hate away she threw, and saved my life, saying, not you.
"5 months later, William and Anne's first child was born, Susanna. And they must have been living here in Henley Street, squashed in with his parents and his 3 younger brothers and his sister.
It's often said that William had to marry Anne, that he can't really have loved a farmer's daughter. But he was a farmer's son, after all. And think about it another way. William was 18, he was vulnerable, his dad had been ruined. Anne was several years older and experienced in the world. She'd be the rock back home here in Stratford on which his career would rest. So maybe it was true what he wrote in that teenage poem. that Anne saved my life.
But in 1583, Will's prospects were not looking bright. He'd already lost the chance of university, and by marrying he'd barred himself from an apprenticeship. And now, if a famous legend is true, he fell foul of the law, in the person of the most powerful local lord, Sir Thomas Lucy.
Welcome to Charlcote, near Wellesbourne, about 4 miles from Stratford. We've got an 85-hectare park, well wooded, and the deer, of course, are fallow deer. They've been here since around 1460, and this is where one of the sons of Stratford, one William Shakespeare, allegedly came to fill his larder.
Shakespeare's crime, so the legend says, was to poach Lucy's deer. Lucy was so angry he had him beaten and jailed, and then kicked him out of town.
What sort of impression do you have of him as a man?
From looking at that?
Yeah. And from what you know of him, yes, from the family documents and traditions.
I'm just a very straightforward sort of character.
Yes, yes.
Perfectly reliable, rather trustworthy.
Yeah. And that's Queen Elizabeth. Did she ever come here?
She came here in August 1572 and was here for, was it 2 days?
Yeah.
No doubt costing a lot of money and upsetting all the servants. And
a lot of cooking involved.
A lot of cooking, yes.
But behind the poaching myth, I think, is a much more sinister tale which takes us into the dark heart of the Elizabethan state. And it starts in the autumn of 1583, when Will was 19.
Zanehoe in Buckinghamshire. And what happened here that October night would have fateful results for all the Catholics in Warwickshire, but especially for the Arden family, the family of Shakespeare's mother.
On the 26th of October, a young man called John Somerville arrived at this inn. He was the son-in-law of Edward Arden, head of the oldest family in Warwickshire and Shakespeare's cousin.
Whether Somerville was mad, mentally deranged, we don't know. But that night here, he announced to the people in the inn that Queen Elizabeth was a heretic and he intended to go to London and assassinate her.
Mad or not, it wasn't the kind of thing to say with spies lurking round every corner. The government decided there was a plot by the Ardens, and to root it out, Elizabeth turned to none other than her friend Sir Thomas Lucy. And this, I think, is the real link between Lucy and the Shakespeares. On the 31st of October, good old Sir Thomas issued a warrant for the arrest of Arden's family and to search the houses of anyone related to them.
This is Saxton's map of 1576. Look, you can see Stratford there. It's only about 6 miles up to the Catholic houses around Lapworth and Baddesley, both of them marked. And maybe 15 miles up to Park Hall. That's the house of Edward Arden, the main branch of the Arden family, within the area of what's now Birmingham. Here you go. So this was Edward Arden's backyard here. Let's just go and have a look at the river here. There's a wonderful description of it with stepping stones, shrouded with woods, kingfishers diving. Look at it today. That takes all sorts to make a historical landscape, doesn't it? What must have been quite good stonework here. Lots of Victorian bricks, as you'd expect, because the place was rebuilt many times, lived in until 100 years ago. But flat Tudor bricks as well. This looks like a wall here, doesn't it?
Arden and his family were arrested and taken to London. A secret prison diary gives the chilling build-up to the Ardens' tragedy. November the 6th, Edward Arden brought to the Tower. The same day, his friend Francis Throgmorton arrested and put in the torture chamber known as Little Ease. 13th of November, Arden's wife and daughter brought to the Tower. 23rd of November, Edward Arden severely tormented on the rack. But still there was no proof of Arden's treason. And nor, back in Charlcote, could Lucy find any.
Unless you can make Somerville and Arden's wife and Somerville's wife speak directly to those things you desire to have discovered, it will not be possible for us here to find out more than is found already. For the papists in this country greatly do work upon the advantage of clearing their houses of all shows of suspicion.
Elizabeth's torturers never found evidence of Arden's guilt. But Arden and Somerville and their wives were sentenced to death. On the eve of his execution, so the government said, poor mad Somerville committed suicide in his cell. The next day, Edward Arden, the head of Shakespeare's mother's family, was executed in front of the early morning crowds by the meat market here at Smithfield.
Public execution was a long drawn-out theatre of cruelty in Elizabeth's England, and you were lucky if you were dead before they got on to the really gruesome bits, disemboweling you and burning your entrails in front of your eyes. And that was before the butchery began. And you could see that sort of thing in every public space in every major town in England. But when it happened to a member of your family, that was different.
Such cruel injustice at the hands of the state can mark you for life. And as we shall see, William never forgot. So there's the first 19 years of Shakespeare's life. He'd seen his father rise to the top and then lose it all. He'd learned what it's like to be privileged and to be an outsider, to live one life in public and another in private. He'd married and become a father, and he'd seen his family branded as traitors. And that's just the beginning of the story. In the next part of our search for Shakespeare,